Hey everybody, welcome back to Seeds of Love. Today Barb is taking a much needed vacation, but I have a really beautiful guest with me today. She's a global facilitator in transformation and empowerment. She's a freedom chaser, a trailblazer, an On It 6 challenge taker, a Go For Your Win alum, and an anime lover. She's recently wrapped up her own workshop where she took Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell's hero journey and taught others how to apply it to the natural cycles of life. She's been on her own journey and has transformed herself into someone living a life of service by assisting others and awakening their own personal legend. To me, she's just a straight up badass human being who also has a super cutesy Care Bear side. Julia, welcome to Seeds of Love.
Thank you, Stacy. I love that introduction. I felt so luxurious as you were introducing me.
Luxurious like your hair. I like it.
Yes.
So new, right? Just like you.
Yes, literally got it done for the Seeds of Love podcast.
So much love. It's just coming right out of you. So we talked a little bit in your intro about the hero's journey. What does that mean?
Stacy, you're muted. I love
that.
Use your voice, girl. You are worthy.
So we talked in the intro about the hero's journey. So what does that mean to you?
So the hero's journey was something that, as I've been going through this online course called Go For Your Win, something I got really, go for your win. I got really in tune with my intuition. And I really noticed that there was this pattern, really like this cyclical cycle of really like discovering something new and then going over an obstacle and then taking the wisdom and sharing it. And so really I read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and that just completely blew my mind, which is really how I discovered the hero's journey. And what it means to me is that anyone has the potential to be the main character of their life. Anyone has that innate desire to overcome and transform. And so it's been a really powerful and just eye-opening experience for me, because really, like, I viewed life previously as like there's this finish line and I'm just going through the motions.
Right.
Like, I mean, how many times in your life have you felt that you've just been going through the motions and it's just how things are supposed to be?
Well, I'm 32 now. Up until pretty recently, I think that's kind of how I live my life. It wasn't until a few years ago that I kind of decided that I no longer wanted to prescribe to that and wanted to go in a different direction. But yeah, so definitely for a majority of my life, I think I live like that. I think a lot of us do.
Yeah, and so really I wanted to create a workshop and really create the space of, because we see, especially during the pandemic, there's a lot of pain going on. There's a lot of people having their own experiences, really taking on some tough circumstances. And so I really wanted to shift the narrative to, yes, you are going through an obstacle. Yes, things are hard right now. And also, you can really, there's something really powerful in choosing to lean into the discomfort and seeing what the lesson is. And I understand that that may not be available to everyone, but I think in a lot of cases, we have more control than we give ourselves the credit for.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the inspirations as to why we wanted to do this podcast and bring you on, is to create another little space or another platform for this information to get out there. Because I feel like had I had awareness of the hero's journey or even knew what that was, I maybe could have navigated life a little bit differently, or maybe not have been so hard on myself or taken so many things personally or held on to events or people or traumas for as long as I did. It's just one of those things that it's just a whole other perspective for people to maybe look at life And up until recently, I didn't even really know what the hero's journey was. So this is
Mm.
another way, I think, for us to be able to share it and use our platforms to do that.
Yes. And so I did want to take the time to just like really set the space. And yeah, the hero's journey is actually a very, even though it is found in psychology, it's actually found in a lot of places as well. Like when you think about the hero's journey, you think about those tropes, like on your Netflix TV show, not sponsored by the way, but Netflix, if you would like to sponsor us. So you find it on Netflix. You find it in your like reading bedtime stories to your kids. You find it even in your childhood. Maybe you read Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, or even thinking about, you know, comic books. It's like that same call to action, facing the obstacle and really transforming and metamorphosizing into something else.
Yeah, I love that call to action piece. The call to action, there's first that. So when did you realize that you were on a hero's journey?
So I would say the most impactful moment of my life was when I was 17 years old. So when I was 17 years old, I grew up in a super small town in Minnesota, and I had really like shut myself off, like completely closed myself off from people. I really felt like I just wasn't understood. And so I had spent my entire life living in a domestic violence home, and like I didn't think it was wrong. I just thought that's the way things were. And so what really I feel like propelled my journey was I found out I wasn't going to graduate high school because my grades were so bad, Stacy. Like I couldn't focus on school when like my home life was really chaotic and just like completely out of line. And so that was the moment. It was that like call to action of like the thing I love is being threatened. So like the thing that I wanted to do was to graduate high school, pursue what I wanted to do, be creative at my own liberties, and to find out that that was going to be taken away from me, that I was going to have to stay with my parents, you know, that was like my biggest fear, you know, and as a 17-year-old, that was a very scary thing for me. And so I decided I need to do something about this. Like, I don't care what it takes. I want to graduate. I want to fix my family. I want to heal my family. I want to heal myself. I want to get to know myself. And so this was like mini Julia trying to figure out, okay, I've spent so many years like shut down, angry, disconnected from other people. And this was really like my first attempts at creating something for me, choosing me. And so I talked with my school counselor and I worked with her in setting up a meeting with my teachers. So I set up a meeting with my teachers. I was so scared, right? I was so scared. I didn't want my parents to get in trouble because, you know, my parents might have done the things that they had done, but I still deeply loved them. And so I didn't want them to get in trouble. And that was really what was keeping me away from other people, was I was like making up that I would be ripped away from my family, you know, and I had created this narrative that things couldn't possibly be better, that it would be my fault. And so here I am stepping into personal responsibility
Yeah,
really for the
17.
first time. Yeah.
17.
Stepping into personal responsibility for the first time in my life. And I said, I get to choose me. I get to graduate high school, whatever it takes. So again, I set up this meeting and all my teachers were there. Some were super compassionate, like engaged, Like really, like instead of really like me crying and like asking for sympathy, I just like said like, can you work with me? Like, here's what's been occurring in my life. And it took a lot of courage to step into that vulnerability, right? Because I was like terrified, because I'm like, this is my last shot. What if it doesn't work out? And so I stepped into it. I leaned into the vulnerability. And some of my teachers were really compassionate. A lot of them really worked with me, and some just chose to look the other way, you know? And at the time that was hurtful, but I also like was really grateful for the people who were able to be there for me and hold space for me, even when I was like a 17-year-old, you know, here holding this meeting with people who've also been through a lot of hardships. And so I was able to like work my butt off, do a bunch of extra credit. I started opening up to my friends in school and just being completely authentic and honest. And for so long, I was so scared. And here was my entire school, the people I loved, like with arms open, like ready to help. My counselor, like offering to book therapy sessions with like me and my family, you know, having people house me in the meantime as like me and my family works through things. And so I was blown away by the level of support that I'd got. And like the thing that I want to emphasize is there hadn't been an opportunity where like everything was at risk for me in my head, right?
Right.
So like my physical safety was definitely at risk, but that wasn't registering for me because that was my normal.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Until there was that disruption of the thing that I love, the thing I was looking forward to is now in jeopardy.
Right.
And so when I created that, I was able to graduate high school.
Yeah.
And I was able to get music scholarships because I was a band kid.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'm just really grateful for the people who stepped into my life unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to pursue and be the cool, quirky, pink-haired lady that I am now.
That we all love. We just love you just as you are.
Thank you. And I've been able, because of that situation, I was able to have really hard conversations with my family.
Right.
And now, like, my family and I were on speaking terms. It's taken years to really work things out. But, like, now an actual relationship is being formed. And I don't think that would have happened hadn't there been that moment where I had to choose, do I step up or do I let this be the same conversation, the same thing that holds me back?
And your story is so beautiful because really, like the Julia at 17 prior to that, it's like wasn't able to have those conversations, right? It was like the courage that you cultivated during that whole experience and the growth that that put you through is what got you to being able to have that conversation. And then also as a reflection was able to, you know, bring that to your family dynamic. And I like that you really touched on it. And I'm sorry for that part of your life. Obviously though, it helped create this really, strong woman that you are today. But how there's so many children who do have like young teens and young adults who have a pretty hostile or volatile home life and then have that expectation at school to be upholding many things. And I know in my own studies that when we're in fight or flight, it's pretty hard to learn. So I think it's a beautiful thing that those educators and the people around you were able to embrace you. And obviously they saw your ownership and that personal responsibility piece come in and just say like, listen, like I just need help. How can we do this together? And how they just embraced you. And like all those people, like you said, showed you that unconditional loving piece, because that's what I think really helped you thrive was that unconditional loving piece and the embrace and support, not judgment and shame right? Like that's really what helped pull you through, is having that around you. And that's such a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, really, you touched on that. Really, the word that comes to mind is acceptance. Like, it was like finally I was being received.
Yeah.
But I also didn't realize that I had all my walls up. And I had every right to have my walls up. I had every excuse in the book to be the way that I was. And also, like, I just, every time when I'm thinking about what I'm up to, or even creating my workshop, I think about, who is this for? And it always comes back to that moment of the first time that I really considered choosing courage, and that I did, that I stepped through it. And so even when I'm writing my workshop and really continuing to create my own work on the hero's journey, I think about, what did that 17-year-old Julia need to hear? What would have been the piece of wisdom, or what would have been even the space, or what would have been the friendships or the connections that at that time I felt that I needed, and I was so scared to ask for. So I really like to watch out there for 17-year-old Julia, and really even with my nieces and nephews, like just being there for them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as children, we're taking in so much information, and it's so critical to create an environment where we're loving, accepting, and understanding that we're all going through a journey, and that the age doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I feel the same. I've always tried to make a really good point of being close with my cousins, especially my younger cousins, and being a real role model for them. And when we take that on, it's like, okay, well, let's get started on your journey then. If you're gonna be a role model, let's don't just talk about it, be about it, right? So, so what made you want to take your experiences and use it to assist other people rather than just keep it to yourself?
So in Spanish, there's this phrase, and I've talked about this actually multiple times this week, so I love this question. There's this phrase that in order to really understand something, you need to teach it. And that's something that I've really learned throughout this journey, is that actually the more I give, the deeper I dive in with people, the more one-on-one coaching I do, I'm giving, but I'm also learning and healing myself, because I'm able to see myself in mirrors of other people. I'm able to see their life experiences, and although the circumstances are different, the stories are different, the message is all in the same. And so being able to, for me, I felt so inspired, like when I would volunteer, or there was like a school project that really like launched me into nonprofit work, was that feel good feeling of I matter and I'm also making a difference. And so even with coaching, like I feel, yes, it is about giving, and it's also about receiving. And, I only know what Julia only knows. There may be, when I'm working with a client, or I'm working with a student, or I'm just simply having a conversation. I know in many of our conversations, Stacy, I actually end up learning a lot as I'm like giving and having that exchange. And so I choose to look at, if I give away the wisdom, if I give away my life experiences, so many more diamonds and treasures will surface along the way.
Yeah. A lot of shiny, happy people.
Yes.
We have some really good conversations. Oh my God, like a tea time could go for hours. But I love that. So like, that's a really the big point of, you know, when you share it with other people rather than keep it all to yourself, especially when you've experienced those emotions of gratitude and joy and just excitement and just that feeling of, you know, having been of service to someone, how proud you can even just be of yourself when you go home and you actually are super proud of yourself. And especially if you've struggled in life and then are out there helping other people and allowing yourself to feel that joy. It's like, why would you keep that to yourself? You know, there's a lot of other people out there that want to feel joy and want to feel happiness. And I think when we share our experiences, it allows people to maybe relate through our story. And it almost like gives them permission to sort of like step into their own, which is exciting.
It's so exciting. I mean, I had this student, so I think about like when I was first starting my coaching journey, and I had this student, she had the same struggles as me, and it was so perfect because I was struggling with judgment, like at that point in my life. And this was like the student that I was working with, her big breakthrough was around judgment. And so she like was noticing, oh, I have these patterns of I'm choosing to judge people, judge myself, pick on people, pick on myself. And as I was working with her and asking her questions and really diving deep, I was actually able to not only support her, but also heal parts of me, and discover things about my own judgment, the way that I choose to filter the world, and how that was limiting me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, like, I just think, you know, yes, we all get to be on our own journey, but there's such a larger conversation to be had when we come together and become united and really elevate the consciousness of our own communities.
Yeah.
So that could be our families,
Mm-hmm.
that could be, you know, I know plenty of teachers who work with the kids at their school or even work with their staff as they're learning things about themselves. I mean, it's really limitless when we share the wisdom, you know, and people will take what they take and put down what they put down.
Exactly.
And also, we don't get to underestimate the power of one because it ripples out really quickly.
I love that. Oh, it gave me chills. And you know, I like that you touched on that piece of creating like a really, like the environment you create for children in learning, or just the environment in general, how important it is. And I have worked with many children before, like in a childcare center, and ran my own little program that was based around like wellness and really about like emotional regulation and just grounding, and how important that sense of acceptance is, and belonging, and accepting yourself, and moving forward, and how important that is. And I think it's like so happy that you touched on that. And you did sort of mention that, you know, working with a lot of other people, like some of us do have similarities. So do you think that a lot of us are quite similar in our belief systems and our actions, or what do you feel?
So I really feel that the work that was put down by Joseph Campbell, which was inspired by Carl Jung, I feel like a lot of that work really set a modern day context for, say, like personality types or different belief systems. And it's really, if we strip it back, it's based on real people. And so I truly feel that throughout our entire evolution as human beings, the best way I can put it is that our beliefs have shifted over time, but we're still a part of a community, even though, say, we're not living in a hut, or say we're not living in the same apartment complex, right? But we're still taking in the same information, the same news. And so I really feel that right now, at this point in time, the biggest struggle and similarities that I've seen have been in self-doubt. And so if you're feeling self-doubt at home, like, know that it's actually a very common thing and it's totally normal. You know, Stacy, I don't know if you've ever felt like, oh, maybe I'm the only one,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I certainly have.
Yeah. I ran out of fingers when I counted how many times. Yeah, absolutely.
And so although the circumstances may be different, I really think at the core, something that's a huge gift about us as humans is our ability to communicate and create community. And so when that's taken away, when we feel like we're not good enough, when we feel that we're unloved, which for a long time in my life I felt unloved, unworthy, that I couldn't bring anything to the table, I definitely feel that, you know, had I known that even though the circumstances that someone else may be going through were different, but the feelings were very similar, that would have shifted my entire life, right? Instead of like internalizing it and like picking at myself,
Right.
like maybe I would have called 17-year-old Stacy and we would have had a conversation about it.
Yeah, and I totally would have.
And so again, like I really believe that those beliefs and insecurities and doubts may be very similar, but the circumstances are absolutely incredibly different for different stages in life.
And you know, like a lot of people. So Julie and I met on a community page because we were both in a course called Go for Your Win that Aubrey Marcus created, and we met on this like the online community board, and ended up creating like a small little group to do the course with. And I honestly, even in that course of so many people wanting to do big things in life and wanting to really bring something like a mission or a passion to the world, in all of that, even in that community, there's people who still struggle, right? It's like, even like people who are out there doing the work, it's like everybody still has those moments of self-doubt that creep in. When you do have a community around you that's actually there, that is able to hold that space for you and reach and to hold the space for you to move through the self-doubt, because everyone knows that you have the ability to do that and are just there to support you to find it within yourself to move through it. That's a super empowering thing too, is not give you the answers, but remind you deep down that you have what it takes, and that maybe it is just a courage moment to just kind of remind you of that. But it is such a beautiful thing when you have created that community around you, or you see people around you where you can reach out and ask for help, and to really take it upon yourself to go get what it is you need. And if that might just be support. And I'm really happy that we met on there. Met a lot of really great
Yes.
people. It's been a great course, great group. So do you think like everybody, I mean, we see it a lot in on that community page, but also in the people that we coach. Do you think that everybody has a hero's journey to walk? Do you think everyone kind of comes in with that?
Yes, 100%. Everyone, I will tell you right now, people, everyone has a legend,
Yeah,
an epic tale, a heroic journey.
I love it. I feel like Oprah. You get a legend, and you're a personal
Yes.
legend, and you're a personal legend, and so
It's
are you.
it's so in each and every single one of us. And the reason that I say that, like, really is because I haven't walked in your shoes. But I'm very clear that a part of being human is having to go through some very tough things sometimes and having to choose, do I go through it or do I choose something else?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want our listeners and viewers to really get that your story isn't insignificant.
Mm-mm.
And that it could inspire so many people.
Yeah.
Or maybe it inspires your niece and your nephew. Maybe it inspires your daughter. Really, the power of your story, the way that you say things, lands the message completely different. I mean, if you listen to motivational speakers, or even if you listen to Stacy and I, like really like our message is you're loved
Yeah.
and you're valuable.
Yeah.
And so my delivery may be different.
Mm.
My focus may be different. I focus on the hero's journey. Stacy, your focus is self-love.
Yeah. Love that love. Love that love for yourself. Yeah.
You know, and so the delivery might be different, but know that those deliveries that are different are necessary.
Right.
To really touch every single person out there in the world. And so absolutely, does everyone have a hero's journey within them? Absolutely. I truly believe that everyone is a hero and everyone is capable,
Mm-hmm.
if they say so,
Mm-hmm.
to be the main character of their life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And really, I think that's that piece of, there are many people kind of talking the same thing, right? Like bringing up, like, this coach might say the same thing, this coach might say the same thing, this motivational speaker just said the same thing that you heard last week. And sometimes it, like you said, it could be the tone, it could be the time of your life, it could be something else just happened in the middle between those two events, and it just hit you differently. So it's like we all might have all of that information all available to us at the same time. Sometimes you just need it repeated to yourself enough times. Sometimes you just need that one more experience for you to really just kind of get it, like the knock aside the head, right? But it's like, so it's all, we're all getting that information at us at the same time, but it's like we're ignited at a different time. And that's okay. That we're not all being ignited all at the same time, and that it just comes in waves. And it might happen, you know, in 2020 for you during COVID-19, when you're at home and you might be doing more personal growth than you normally were doing, or you've seen that book that you've had on your shelf for how long, and maybe just now you're picking it up and reading it and you're ready to see its teachings. And I say that to people all the time when it comes to just personal development or spiritual growth in books, because you could grab a book and it could be like the Bhagavad Gita, it could be the Tao Te Ching, and it's these like massively deep spiritual texts. But if you're not ready for what's in there, for the teachings, it's just going to be words on paper. And you might end up reading it, you know, 6 years down the road and say like, how did I miss this? This was amazing, you know. But it's just, it comes down to readiness and when you're ready, and that we're all ready at different times. But
I really love that. And I just want to jump in here because when you were talking, it took me back to, so the book Untethered Soul
love
by
that.
Michael Singer. Yes.
Oh, it's my favorite. I will never go anywhere without this book.
So I had this book for 3 years, like literally on my bookshelf. There's this beautiful French woman that I love, and she's like, just really need to read this book. Gave it to me 3 years ago. And like I completely wrote her off because like I didn't understand. I'm like, what is the untethered soul? Why is this like a black and white photo of like water and a horse, I think? Like I didn't understand.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until this year, even though I'd had that book sitting on my shelf for 3 years, it wasn't until this year that I was like ready to actually take it in. And that I really understood. And, you know, hearing different people say, wow, this book is actually phenomenal, you know? And so when you were saying like not everyone is ignited at the same time, I definitely felt that because I've had that book for so long. I mean, it was like dusty.
Oh God.
And I wasn't able to open it up until this year.
Right.
And so there's also a modern day psychologist, his name is Miles Neal, who actually did work on the hero's journey. And the way that he reinterpreted it was the gradual awakening.
Love it. Yeah.
And so
gradual.
yes. And so when you're speaking,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
That's just, it's much, I think it's easier to integrate when it's a gradual climb and then it just be all at once. But yeah, anyways, yeah.
Yes. After doing many juices and cleanses and diets, I definitely get that now. And so when it comes to really viewing this as a gradual awakening, really feel like there's a bigger conversation on giving ourselves grace and love as we're transitioning through different phases of life.
Yeah, I love that. That give yourself grace piece. Oh my God, we are humans who experience emotion a lot. You know, like that give yourself grace to like maybe fall back a little bit and then come back up and have a heavy day or have a hard day and come back up. Like that piece of it being gradual, I think is such a permission slip for people to understand that you don't have to get it all right now. You don't have to get it all at one time, and to know that this is like an ongoing process. Like the hero's journey happens a lot over time and lifetime, right? So it's like to understand that it's gradual. What are you rushing for? You know, like don't be rushing, just kind of enjoy the journey. The hero's journey is also really beautiful if you stop and look at your experiences. What do you think is the biggest obstacle for people on the hero's journey?
So I know that we touched base on this a little bit
Yeah, a
briefly,
little bit.
but I really feel that the biggest obstacle for people is self-doubt. And I mean, self-doubt can manifest in so many different ways, right? So that could be conversations like, I'm not good enough, or they won't like me, or I'm worried about how people are going to react if I post this,
I'm going
or
to hurt someone.
yeah, I'm going to hurt someone, or I don't look good in this photo. And so, really, self doubt because of the value that we've put on social media and the way things appear in modern day society. I know, especially here in America, really the conversation has shifted into, am I going to be received by the people that I love, or am I going to get hurt? And so for me, that conversation distills down to self-doubt and really questioning our worth and our value.
Yeah, because there's the other side to that too. Then, okay, great. So I'm sitting in self doubt right now. Now, because like I'm on the verge of like a transformation, or I'm on the verge of, you know, going into a different life direction. And instead of the excitement and the joy and like the, oh my God, like the anticipation of it's going to be great, instead I'm, oh my God, like what, like the worst thing could happen basically, right? Like, is this the right decision? Am I going to make a mistake? And like causing this internal crisis. What advice would you give to listeners to overcome that moment, that when they find themselves in that really heavy self-doubt space, or in that right now?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think back to Joseph Campbell's original text on the hero's journey. And really, he calls that crisis moment, that moment when the hero has to choose, this is when I sink or swim. He calls it the metamorphosis phase. And I think that is so beautiful, right? We think about butterflies coming out of their cocoons. And although it's a beautiful experience, the butterfly's wings need to be strong enough to come out of that cocoon, need to choose to fight for their life, to come out
Mm-hmm.
on the other side. And so I want people to know, you listening to me here right now, that whatever you're going through, the circumstance, the trial, the obstacle, that it's actually going to be okay. And you can choose what you do with that information. The circumstance doesn't have to define you. The obstacle doesn't have to define you. It's a moment in time where you are going through a transformation phase, coming out of the cocoon. And so we know that there's a that's going to come out on the other side, and it's also up to you to choose. And so whether that's leaning in on a family member, a friend, getting some coaching,
Mm-hmm.
maybe spending some time in solitude, really with yourself and your own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that piece of self-care and self-love for you is, that you need to take that time to overcome your obstacle, to figure out a solution, know that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's going to take a mentor. Sometimes it's going to take an ally. or maybe picking up that book that's been sitting on your shelf for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, you know, when we touch on that piece of solitude, because in one of our past podcasts, we had talked to someone who used to be so scared to be alone, because alone meant she was alone with her thoughts, and it wasn't like a place that she liked to go to, but eventually became the place where she did the most healing, because, you know, she felt there was a bit of a trap there, right? Like, I can't even be alone with my own thoughts, my goodness. And I do love that you're reaching out to friends and allies, yet sometimes it is kind of like you got to do this on your own. It might be that kind of a moment for you, because I remember having that myself, where it was like, okay, like right now, today, like I'm what I've got. Like I need to sit with myself, and I'm going to do this on my own. And yes, would reach out to certain people when I needed them. And I made sure that, and I love how Brene Brown says this, like, you know, the people that you trust, or the opinions that matter the most to you, are going to fit on this little tiny piece of paper. And they might not be the people who actually feel like they should be on that piece of paper. It might be someone totally different, but you know that they're someone that you can go to for counsel. When you, I like that term, like call counsel. So that's the person that I call, if I find myself in this crisis moment, I'm really struggling to move through it. But I know in my heart that I want to move through it. And I know that, again, I love that it doesn't define you, like that obstacle or the experience prior to, because that's, in a sense, it keeps us stuck in that past cycle, in that past loop, in that past story. And that's not the part of it that defines you. It's that, I love this empowerment piece of, how do I show up today? And like, release yourself from past mistakes, release yourself from past judgment or past hurt, and just how are you going to show up today? And then, of course, you touched on my favorite subject there, the self-love and self-care. So what does self-love mean to you?
So self-love to me means dating myself, treating myself. Anytime when someone will even ask me for dating advice, because now I'm with the love of my life, I always think back to the moments when I felt like I wasn't good enough. The moments when I felt like I'm unworthy. I can't handle this on my own. But I never really in my past took the time to appreciate the things that did work. Never really took the time to slow down and acknowledge that even though things were rough, how far I had come.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, self-love is really taking the time to acknowledge all of the work that I've done.
Right.
It's taking the time to slow down and look at what is working, and taking the time to own that I'm the main character of my own life, and that although things may seem chaotic, I'm here and I'm standing on 2 feet.
Mm-hmm. And doing my best today, right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that piece, because you and I talked about this. Like, sometimes I'll have those moments where, oh my God, I just got triggered into a trauma, and it's like, oh, the backpack goes on, like it's got all my stuff in it, and I'm headed out to my treehouse, and I'll be gone for 2 weeks. Like, you know, the treehouse metaphorically is like I'm just disappearing and I want to talk to anybody. And it's like, as I've come to grow in myself, it's like I can't always treehouse for 2 weeks every time I get triggered in something, right? And as I've grown in my own internal resources and through my own experience and through activities I run myself through, and if my journaling doesn't work, then I go to the next thing. If meditation doesn't help me, I go have a bath. Like, it's the next step and the next step to really assist me in moving through it, or calling a friend or whatever it is, and calling counsel, right? So I love that, because what used to take me maybe 2 weeks is now could maybe be like, you know, a couple hours or maybe a couple days. And I think to really kind of sit, and I love that you want to give people this, it's okay to acknowledge yourself, and it's okay to acknowledge your achievements. There's nothing egotistical about it. There's nothing, you know, shameful about actually honoring yourself and showing yourself that bit, of like, yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I got that. Like, I crushed it that time. Like, you know, that's awesome. Like, have your own little moment of celebration, like self-love, and really celebrate yourself for everything you've done and how far you've gotten. and decisions that you've made, or ones that you have yet to make that maybe you're kind of like sitting on the fence on. You know, I do that sometimes, and I could sometimes sit on the fence about a decision for weeks, and it just kind of like would twist me up. And it's like, actually, if I'm just sitting in truth, I know my answer and I know what to do. And again, it comes down to self-doubt. The self-doubt is what caused me to sit on the fence so much when it would come to decisions. And instead of just, you know, getting quiet in maybe my solitude, if that's what it was, and just asking myself in that whole responsibility bit of like, what is it that's not working, and what is it that I want to do? And I love that you touched on all of that, because it's all part of that internal dialogue. Like when you sit with yourself and talk to yourself, date yourself, you know, at the table, ask yourself the questions you would ask on a date. I love it so much. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything like specific that you would maybe, you know, want to leave listeners with today? If there was one small thing you could drive home, what would that be for them?
I would drive owning your own personal power, right? That you truly matter, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the situation, regardless of what your current financial, emotional state may be, that you matter and that you have a real opportunity to choose you, to show up for you, and to show up for the things that you care about. The circumstance is going to be there. It's going to be there. That's the beautiful thing about the hero's journey, is that it's a cycle, actually. And as you elevate and discover new wisdom, there's likely going to be another fumble along the way. And that's completely okay. But you have the power to choose. You have the power to take action. And know that along the way, you are going to discover some real magic about who you are. And so you matter. And I just invite everyone who's listening today to show up to their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Step up, show up. We got you. You can reach out to us too. We're here. So you know, I got to be a really honorable attendee for your Awaken the Personal Legend workshop that you did, and it was brilliant. I was so happy that I got to be on there. And it was beautiful and so wonderful how you held space for all those people on the call, and really, you know, asking some really good questions that can emit a response. You know, that's the point of like asking the questions that help you kind of go within and ask your listeners to search. And I think that that's super important, is to, you know, to get so much out of the head and how things are going to work and all the logic and all that, and just kind of go within and go into the heart. And a lot of the questions that we ask our listeners and the people that we coach are these really like heartfelt questions and really getting into the heart of things. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your heart with everybody, and what really makes you tick and what really gets you going. Because I know how passionate you are about this topic and this conversation. So I'm really happy that you got to show up.
Very passionate.
Very passionate. Slightly obsessed, but no, very passionate. That's what I call it. So what are you working on right now? So are you working on another workshop? Or are you rolling this one out again for people to be able to hop onto? How can people connect with you? Because you're globally.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram as Hool_bug, which is HOOL_BUG. That is my childhood nickname. So you can find me at Hoolbug. And of course, you can DM me. Right now, what I'm up to is creating another workshop.
Beautiful.
And really continuing my research on human archetypes, and really, how can we take the things that we know, the things that we see every day, the shows that we watch, and create really diamonds out of the things we consume every day. And so that's what I'm up to. And so if anyone's interested in the hero's journey, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, because you are a hero. We all have one. Your story matters. It all matters. And thank you so much, Julia, for being on archetypes. What a whole other beautiful conversation that we might have to have. I think I might be a lover. I don't know. Is warrior, lover, warrior? Can you be both?
That's on a different podcast.
Oh, there you go. Yes, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Okay, thank you so much, Julia, for coming in. I love you so, so much, my dear friend, sister across the world. And thank you so much for our listeners for tuning in today. Lots of love from me, Stacy. Lots of love from Julia. And we'll talk to you guys next week. See ya.